Hello and welcome again to Farm Radio. This time I've already started this, what I thought would be a simple repair. We're already into the nightmarish aspects of it now. I'll elaborate on that. This is from an SG-999. I'll correct that if I'm wrong. I don't have the paperwork in front of me. Anyway, this is a changer that came with it. It has the pop-up changer, this model. I'll show you. And either the seller didn't know it opened up to a changer, which I can't believe, but maybe he did. But the seller. Any event, this is the FA-707A Matsushita changer this is equipped with. This is a later model Panasonic because it came with the in-house changer versus I think the original run was a BSR mini changer, as notated in the service documentation, but there have been some production changes along the way, and this uses that in-house changer, which comes in either AC motor driven or DC motor driven. This happens to be AC because it's a home stereo unit. Anyway, I turned it on and it had the turntable didn't turn at all, and I assumed maybe the switch, check for power, has power. You could hear a slight hum from the motor winding, so you knew it was getting power, and it just wasn't spinning. So, of course, normal rebuild, we'll get into that in a minute. I have the motor, I'll show you. The rest of the unit operates fine. I'll show you that in a moment. Operates, noisy controls, etc., etc., but FM stereo is there. Both channels are operating, and uses the 16 ohm speakers. I might want to mention that. And but anyway, the golden nugget here is the record changer. Yeah, the motor. In some of the groups it says, oh, clean the bearings. I've disassembled and cleaned the bearings, and I'll put in some screenshots perhaps, because I didn't plan on doing a video on this. I just wanted to go in, do the bearings, and go down the road. However, the subject came up with the lacquer thinner, and I know folks that have put lacquer thinner, soak them overnight, the grease comes out, the wicking of the bearing, I understand all that. The pores of the bearing need to be cleaned out, but I was also told by a mentor of mine, which I've got some disagreement when I mentioned that, is that he had to go back to Naphtha because it's too aggressive, the lacquer thinner. I had lacquer thinner. I dumped these bearings in it, and the top bearing, which was frozen, I worked it with some oil. I soaked it in oil first, but it still had residue on the bearing surface. It just wasn't good. It was burnt oil in there, and it had to come out. So I dunked it in the I did a bath of the lacquer thinner. Well, that immediately, I don't know what it did. I wouldn't say disintegrated the felt in there, because folks are like, I've been doing it for years, I've never had a problem. But I've heard from folks that there are some synthetic. I don't know if these folks are talking about domestic motors or whatever. This is Japanese, and it's imported, call it, and it could be different. So I was a little skeptical, but I put it in the lacquer thinner, and it did something to the wick. It shrunk it, and now the bearing ball, it was just floating around in the basket. The minute you turned the motor on, it hummed because it shifted to one side. It was all over the place. I had to repair. I added some felt from a laser printer years ago. It has oil impregnated foam. It's synthetic, but I'll show you in the pictures. And that's how I got the motor going again. All right, enough rambling. Let's get into this a little more. What I've done so far, I've taken the needle off. I've cleaned this up a little. It basically hasn't needed anything. I removed the motor. I want to see the terminations. While I'm at it, I'm going to note how they load the cartridge there. It's a little different than the service manual. Anyway, I removed the motor by removing the pin and snaking the black wire through. The brown wire just goes to the switch, and the red wire is like a back feed to keep the unit powered up when the record changer is on and the power switch is off. That's my take on that. Alright, let's get started, see what we're into here. I wanted to do minimal repair to get it running, but I've run into some problems with the motor. Let me get on with that. Okay, again, so it's the SG-999, and as you can see in the picture, that's fitted with the mini BSR changer in the service documentation on this copy anyway. And the switch I'm talking about, real quick, is our BSR record changer. That's not what this is fitted with. So that's of use to some other units here, but not this one. Another thing about being outside here is maybe get a handful of days like this a year. I can't work outside probably 2/3 of the year. Anyway, any event. Here is the switch we're talking about. That's the phono motor. I'll just document that. It's a lot of shading here, but okay. Right here, right here. That's the turntable switch. That's the switch to the unit. So when the unit is off, this takes over. This is closed with this up here. It powers the unit. That's my take on that. All right. I had to silence the music because of possible copyright. So here's our motor reassembled, and like I say, close tolerance. This top bearing was seized, and after putting the lacquer thinner in, it just fell, and it was all roly-poly in there. It was out, and the basket wouldn't even hold it. It's as if the wick is supporting the basket enough that it pushes against. So with the new wick in there, actually I had to put the old one as a base and supplement it with some new padding, flocking, not flocking, but the fuser wick, I will call it. It's made to be impregnated in oil, so it was a good fit. And there we go. A lot of time was spent on this. I had to open that up and trial and error, but as you can see, it spins pretty freely now, and I'll give you a quick test. I've tried it cold. There she goes. Has plenty of torque, smooth, doesn't get hot. And this is the 2E10 GPL motor. 210 GPL, and it's dated 2570, so it's 1970. A lot of folks called Panasonic low-end stuff, but let me tell you, in 1970, there wasn't much around of this. There was stuff around, but none of us could afford it. This was a good quality, very meticulously machined, just killing us with the quality of the stuff. This stuff was unheard of at the time. So there's your lo-fi rebuttal to that. This stuff here is top-notch in my book. Anyway, this is early. This is old stuff. Old. And look at how smooth. I'm going to kill the power. You can watch it coast a little bit. It coasts okay in my book. And it doesn't get hot, and it's smooth. I would like to get the RPMs of it, but I don't know. I'm going to assume it's around 3,000. I do want to check the shaft with a caliper in case I have to replace this. But I would find a motor out of something else, or the bearing or something if I had to go there. But I don't think I had to. I will have to. Anyway, let's get on. I want to put the motor back in the changer, test it, and reassemble it in the unit. Okay, this is the unit we're talking about here. Like I say, it was sold without a picture of the changer open, but what happens here is, and I have one of these that I picked up off the side of the road, but it's a wreck. It's missing knobs. I don't even know where it is. I don't recall. I think it has the Matsushita turntable. But like I say, the original did not have RCA jacks. The first run, you had to unsolder the leads according to the service documentation. Anyway, that's how you close it. You push this magnet latch down to close. I'm going to clean this up, that's why it's out here. I'm just going to wipe it down, get rid of some of the air, get rid of some of the dust, air blow it, and go on from there. Let's get this turntable ready to go back in here now that the motor's been serviced. It's kind of a pain getting these clips off and stuff, but any event, this isn't a how-to video, it's a burn and learn. Take your time, go carefully and be methodical about how this stuff is assembled when you're taking it apart. Real quick, I get 4mm on the motor shaft. The height, which is also a factor here, I should get the height here approximately. .4. I don't know how accurate this is. I'm going to say 12. I'm going to say around 12. Here's the unit again back inside. The elevating turntable assembly. Thing of beauty, to me anyway. We're going to get some craft glue here. This is what I've been using lately. And we're going to glue the mat back on. Just put a few dabs and don't put it in the sun. Not that it matters, but I'm even going to go so far as matching it up to the exact orientation by the staining of how it was. And there was some moisture around wherever this was stored. Again, I didn't go crazy on the glue, I just let it set up. Just check the edge. I don't want anything coming out on the edge, but that's just enough to tack it on. I just don't want it to bend the ring or anything like that with some sort of mishap. So inside you go. Back at the motor, our next crucial step is I marked a rotor where the step bushing for the speed. Why removable? Well, it's good that it's removable because I was able to service the bearing. I wouldn't have been able to without this being removable. Why is it removable? We're 60 hertz here, and if you were to run it in Europe, let's say, where it's 50 hertz, you would need to change the motor spindle. Okay, anyway, and a feeler gauge tells me about how high off of the motor shaft it was. So I'm going to reassemble that. I'm going to adjust, have my mark there. I'm just going to put it right back in the same spot. I'm going to gauge it like so and tighten it. There we go. I may have to readjust, but I'll do that once it's in the set. Now the fun part. There are some spacers. I had tried doing this in the set initially, which was difficult, but I wanted to get in and get out without disturbing anything else, because the deeper you go, the more trouble you can get into. Thankfully this had the connectors, as I mentioned, so we didn't have to do any soldering. They have these Mylar spacers here on one of them, and again, take plenty of pictures. Take pictures when you disassemble. You figure, oh, I'll remember. You don't remember. I don't any longer anyway. And of course, pay attention. There's one spacer with machining there, and the rest are just regular. The two others, there is one not like the other. And like I said, this comes in AC model or DC. They use the same changer in the DC units. So any event, take pictures, because it was difficult figuring out inside how this plate went, but I think we have it down here. For those of you who care to pay attention, that's a 5.5 here and a 7mm here. Deep socket preferable. Now, one of these was coated with a locking compound, and it did strip the threads. One of these is stripped, could be factory. It was not me, but about half of the thread here is shot, so I had to select which we had orientated of the three, and we're good. I believe this is what I wanted to mention, these shims here that I also marked, and this is where pictures come in handy. When I assembled the motor, I noticed the armature, I don't know if it sits true. It's true in the field, meaning it doesn't scrape. It's a close tolerance here. And I think this is just to compensate for that on the, as it rides, so it rides perpendicular on the idler there. But we'll check that. Real quick here, because I mentioned it earlier, it may not be on the schematic, but again, we're all learning here. Anyway, they're loading the cartridge, it looks like, with this blue, gray, yellow, which is 6, 8, and 4 zeros. So that's 680K. And then we have a 105 marking here, which I did the math here, and I checked it. That's 1050, 10, 5 zeros. Count back 6, get you 1 microfarad. And blue, gray, yellow, same thing, 6, 8, 4 zeros, 680K. So this is to suppress some of the high, no, this is to allow some of the high frequencies through. And this is to load the cartridge down here. So there you have that. Okay, back to the motor. We're all mounted, spins nicely. This is the moment of truth here. Okay, not powered up, but with the changer on, I wanted to check my alignment, and I'll need to go up just a hair, as I'm not reaching, I don't have the whole surface on the idler. I don't have all the surface area. I'm just off a tiny, tiny, ever so slight bit. Actually, that looks pretty good at the moment, but we'll try it first. But I think I may have to raise him just a hair. Put the platter back on. The idler needs to be taken off, cleaned, and grease applied. It says grease, so we'll put some PTFE grease on there. And everything else is pretty good here. We'll do the overarm and stuff like that. But the condition of this thing doesn't warrant bad motor bearings. It was played a lot. It was seized, but that bearing thing with the lacquer thinner was too much. It fell apart. It ran before I did that, so it was attributed to that. That's what I am going to. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. For whatever reason, the bottom bearing is okay. It was just the top one. So heat, age, I don't know, but moment of truth here, like I said. Hold, please. I get comments all the time. Oh, you do this, your camera, your sound is this. Well, sometimes my finger, when I'm filming, my finger will go over the microphone like that. And yes, it's unfortunate. Oh, it's during some key moments. Yeah, it usually is. But these videos are raw, unedited, as you see them. So that being said, that's an answer to one of those inquiries. This is just on, so the switch is eliminated. I don't want to eliminate it. I don't want to leave this out in the sun. Make sure we're not in change cycle here, which we're not. I'm not sure if this spindle's removable on this or not. I don't believe so. So here we go. Contact. Hey, it spins. What do you know? It's got some pretty good pull, too. I bet you it might even cycle. This idler's not clean yet. That's good. I'm happy with that. And it's smooth. 78. We can change the speeds. We can tack it in a minute with the phone, maybe. But I do have a disc, but out in the sunlight, it's not going to work. Okay. The needle's been removed for safety purposes. The cartridge and yoke is good. The saddle and whatnot. Okay. Good stuff. This motor was a mess. Look at that, smooth as silk. Beautiful. You can see by the wear marks in this was played exclusively on 33. And yeah, we're off just a little bit. I'm going to have to raise that a small. See how it's not riding exactly centered in the motor. The motor is good. The motor could be drooping too, but I don't think so. These grommets are really good. Okay, I'm going to raise that just ever so slightly. I want you all to see how good this coasts down. I'm trying to get the wheel off it. Try to get the idler away from it. Stay in focus and shut down. Still coasting. Still coasting. Still coasting. It's still on. The switch. Okay, here we go. Take 2 on that. Focus. Okay, the motor's running. One last thing, I want to show you how it's coasting now. It coasts pretty darn good. So it will kill the power here. It's spinning at the moment. You can watch the set screw. I'm happy with that. Okay, I've adjusted, and I'm good on all steps. I mean, I'm not readjusting. I'm right on as close as I want to be. Details. One oil washer on the bottom, and when I clean them, 2 on the top. Pay attention. C-clip, also known as the Jesus clip. Jesus. Why? Because when you try to take it off, it goes flying. Someone suggested you put a rag over it when you take it off, so if it does go flying, it suppresses it. Any event, I'm going to clean this with, I'm going to use 409 just because the tape player guys use it on the rubber pinch rollers and that, and I'm going to wipe the center. I'm going to put some PTFE grease and slap this back on. Get in and get out. One question on the, one discussion on these. I've had these rebuilt. I had to go with a new old stock because the rebuild, I know it's a 1-to-1, people say. The speed changes, and I've seen this on a number of rebuilds. I don't know if the guy's, his collar, when he goes to cut the tire, is wiping out the bearing a little. They claim it maybe is worn, but I can tell you, I've had a couple now, that center is not true, and it affects the speed. I believe because it tilts a little when it's playing. It's a 1-to-1, I get that. The speed doesn't change. The size of the tire does not dictate with a single idler the speed. However, if that center is not true, it seems to be affecting the speed because it ever so slightly is tilted. So folks say, I changed the idler, the speed is still off. Try another idler. Try one that hasn't been rebuilt as a baseline, because I've seen the speed change with a rebuilt idler. Couple thing on idlers rebuilt. I have it. I may compare at a later date, but the tire on one is also skinnier. I don't know if it's the exact same part number, but it is a Panasonic idler. There are 2 known part numbers I'm aware of. What I noticed is the rebuilt was sloppy. It had play side to side, whereas this one I put grease on, and the tolerance is so tight that the grease just comes up off the shaft. There is no space for even grease on there. This just fits on there, and I noticed that with the new one, new old stock. The replacement had play in it in the center, so that's what affected the speed. On the 1-to-1, size of the rubber doesn't matter. Yes, I understand that, but I'm telling you, I have differences with the rebuilds. Even on a VM I noted the RPMs of the hard idler, and it was within tolerance. Although it was slipping, it was in tolerance. Slipping meaning it wouldn't cycle, but it pulled okay, and the speed was within spec. The rebuild, even a current rebuild, the speed was off. It wasn't exactly the same. I have it written down, the differences, and I'll tend to that later. Okay, I have to put this clip on, so off camera we go. Okay, unfortunately, the first record on the test rack. Ray Price is our test record today. I've put the needle back in. I don't know this song. I don't know if we're doing... Sounds okay to me. Let me get a... well, let's hold on. Okay, we'll give this a shot here on 45 real quick. We don't lose it. Right on, 450706. Couldn't get any closer. Low and flutter. 0.7. 0.5. Okay. We're in spec. Perfect. 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 I did want to mention one note on the motor is to not drop any component. The rotor, the stator, don't drop. Once you drop it, it's never going to be the same. Okay, more testing. Okay, back at the bottom side of the changer. What I've gone and done is reattach this portion here because I didn't want to cut the motor wires. Well, one broke off. All these broke off actually because they're so old and decrepit, and everything's petrified here because it's just so old. I used a pin remover to remove that pin, and I snaked it back through all this anchoring here so I could get the motor off of the changer. That's been fixed. The bugs have been getting me all day. I finally got, because I switched out the bug zapper. The other one, the light is running, but it didn't seem to be zapping. We'll look into that later. I put a little furniture polish to help get it through this decrepit PVC. It was hard to. I actually was going to use a pull wire. I used a pull wire at first, but I eventually, with the help of the lubricant, got it to slide through. Alright, and these wires were taped to keep them together. I don't like these zip ties, but I think there was another piece of tape here. I'm going to put a zip tie here. I don't like these because they break. Well, some of them do, the cheap ones, I'll say. But this came from a toy or a bungee cord or something. I recycled them. So I'm going to tie a zip tie there. The issue with the landing mechanism, I did lube here. I lubed a few areas. In fact, I could use a little gel. Take some from the other side. That was due to the turntable was not level. Turntable has to be level for all functions to function properly. And I noticed when it's level, it's fine. Alright, that's it for this side. Everything is put back, and this is again where pictures come in handy. Everything is back exactly as it was. Say one thing, I've been making use of these little, these are just packing trays that come with flat screen monitors or whatnot, but I must say they got all little cubbies and stuff. You can keep all kinds of screws, and you know, it doesn't damage things. It's non-marring if you have to set something down on it. In fact, I've got the main unit on one of them right now, so it doesn't get scratched or dented or dinged. But these things have come in pretty handy as a little tool, a tool caddy or helper or whatever you want to call it. And all right, anyway, and you can carry everything in with one shot. All right, up next here, the changer. We're going to get the unit out here. We're going to put the unit, the changer back in the unit. This is how it's not very serviceable. I don't know what's worse, having mayflies fly in my face while I'm doing this, or dreading getting these clips back on without losing any. And again, it's not very serviceable. Well, if you know what you're doing, it is, but not very easy to go in once. It's not very easy going in these things. I go like that, and then I take the spudger and I come over here because those pliers are magnetic, and I get the clip sort of sound. You're going to lift up because there's a slot there you have to get into, and I have to do it off camera, but there you go. Not very serviceable. And again, as I was working on this motor in the set, that's when the wire broke off, the motor was humming, it was just I got the motor out without taking the changer out, but yeah, that was a downward spiral. Okay, there's one other connection here for the motor. The AC plug goes here under this mess over here, which you don't want to deal with. There's a 3-pin receptacle over there that mates with this one that's buried in here, and I have to make sure that the mechanism does not interfere with this wiring. I'll have to check that, but this goes over in there. There's its mate in there. You be careful not to break any of these edge connectors or connections. There's our RCAs. This is where it differs from the service manual. They had you unsolder all the signal wires and unsolder the motor wires, which we don't have to do that. They added a plug. That's why I call this a later. Probably took 5 minutes or more to get that connector in there. I think it's seated. 3-pin AC, and this thing, edge connector, I don't even want to have to even think about dealing with. One note on the bottom, these feet were originally glued. When I purchased this, the seller said I broke one of the feet, so of course they're unique, and you can't glue this plastic. It's hard plastic. So what they've done is, there were 2 feet here. This I've just replaced with a substitute. I've ordered a couple of, I'll say, replacement rubber feet just to put here, but they were the identical, the 2, and the other one was cracked, so I got 2 good spare feet from the back, which I'll replace with ones that don't match the bottom, but now I have 4 matching bottom feet. In any event, needles in. We're playing just through the headphone. I have to clip that. I forgot. I can't let it go, so I'll have to mute that. Okay, phono. See what we get here. Hopefully that's 45. Let's play a record. Alright, I think we got some noisy transistors here, but we'll get into that. I come in at about 4 grams there. It says 6 in the factory manual, but I'm good with that.